teach, since I'm teaching an education class, they have to help teach the class. They have to read certain sections and talk about certain things, and they do presentations. And so virtual is just the way that we do things. I'm sorry. Oh, I think it was just background noise. Sorry about that. So, you know, but one of the things that I would suggest is engagement is huge. You guys all know your teachers, you teach in the classroom, and I did prior to this too. You have to get them engaged somehow. One of the things is we require that they have their cameras on and that they have their audio on. They're allowed to mute themselves when they're not talking, obviously. But you have to have them engaged. If they're not engaged, if their camera's off, we can't even be sure that they're participating. I tell some funny stories when we had our PDD for the VRC the other day of kids doing this with a person behind them and they're talking to them. They think that we aren't noticing that they're not even paying attention, or they're doing this. And they're working on something in their lap, like watching a YouTube video or something. So that, I guess, would be my number one point is make sure they're engaged, and make sure you can see that they're engaged, that you are asking questions all the time of them. We cannot do lecture virtually. It just doesn't work. They tune out.
Thank you. Ms. Satterfield, there's a question about what do you utilize or recommend for middle school FCS classes?
There is a career exploration, career interest survey available on ICEV, and it provides really good information on all of the CTE pathways, and it allows students to kind of pick and choose what interests them, and it gives videos and PowerPoints and activities to really find that good fit, because that's really where it should start, is in middle school, getting students involved and interested, you know, for lifelong occupation.
Thank you. Megan, there's a great question on virtual kitchen lab activities for the food section of FACS, as well as some culinary art virtual kitchen lab activities. So I'll let you handle that one.
Sure. So within the culinary arts curriculum, and then also within some of the food science lessons, there's going to be projects that have recipes that go along with them already built in. And so you could have your students complete those in a home kitchen. Or what we heard a lot of our users doing, really starting once students went home, was kind of doing a raid the pantry type project and figuring out what they could make or practice those skills with. One teacher we actually heard from that was a culinary teacher was having her students practice cutting techniques using Play-Doh. And so they kind of formed what the food would look like out of Play-Doh, and then practiced on the Play-Doh to cut that up into the different shapes that they were supposed to for the different cutting methods. So really, it's a little bit of using some of those pre-made activities or projects that are already there, and then just using some creativity and being flexible with what your students are actually going to have available to them at home. If it's not something if it's not a carrot, maybe it's a Play-Doh carrot, or maybe it's substituting out. I mean, one of the big things that we see in a lot of the standards is, how do you make substitutions in recipes? Well, this would be a great time to figure out how you could implement that. And obviously, as we're all learning, we've all got to be able to think on our toes and make some quick decisions in life. And so being able to kind of task your students with some of that when you're having them do those projects and activities is just a tip that I think they'll be able to, it's a life skill really, that they'll be able to take with them. So those would just be my kind of suggestions and some things that I heard our users doing.
Thanks, Megan. We do have several questions on learning management systems. And does ICEV work with Blackboard, with Schoology, with Canvas, Google Classroom? The answer is yes. And if you go to the CTE Inspired conference page, we did have a workshop regarding this yesterday, which will really walk you through exactly how to do that integration. We also have those integration instructions and tutorials that are loaded into the tutorial page on ICEV. But it's a great question, and the answer is yes. We've tried to develop a tool that allows for that integration. ICEV does also operate as its own self-contained LMS. If you wanted to do everything within the platform for you and your students, you can do that as well. So a great question, and I hope that helps. Do you prefer tablets or PCs? I'll let the panelists answer how their students are utilizing it.
We actually have a one-to-one program with Chromebooks at my school, and so they use their Chromebooks, and it works amazingly.
Ms. Satterfield?
Yes, yeah, we have the one-on-one initiative from 3rd grade all the way through 12th, and they are Chromebooks, but ICEV is just like a website. So if you have the tablet, if you have a home-based computer, if you have the Chromebooks, they're accessible from anywhere. I've even pulled it up on my phone before. So versatility is a huge plus for ICEV. You can access it anywhere.
I'll ask the panelists this. This question has been asked a few times. What is one of your favorite lessons? Ms. Benham, I'll start with you.
Favorite lessons. Wow, that's really hard to say. Favorite lessons. I personally, because I am teaching an education class, love the instructional practices lessons. They're very, very thorough. They do a great job of letting students know about strategies and different ways of giving instruction to students. Favorite fun one for a different reason is actually to do the adolescent human development ones. Partly because the kids get really embarrassed, and I don't know, I have a quirky sense of humor, and I think that's kind of funny when they get embarrassed about things like that. So those would be my two favorites.
Ms. Satterfield, do you have a favorite lesson?
I do. Inside of the Introduction to Human Studies class, maintaining mental health is one of my favorites because, mental health is kind of stigmatized, and this really breaks the ice. And so it really lends to kind of an introductory lesson, kind of icebreakers to really start the semester, assessment on their own mental health, but then it turns it around and it gives scenarios, and it talks about ethics, because obviously, we do care about our students' mental health, but then they take on the professionalism type scenario, and they're given scenarios, to step outside of the box and really how, it's called What Would You Do? What would you do in this situation? So I always tell my students, you have to take care of yourself before you're able to help other people. So this lesson takes care of both of those things. So yourself, mental health, and then also what would you do to manage, the other side of that within your occupation.
Well, I think we're out of time, and that sounds like a great place to kind of stop for the Q&A of hearing some of y'all's favorite lessons. Like Mark had mentioned, we are going to post the Q&A questions and answers on the CTE Inspired page, so that way you all will have access to that. We do have a challenge code for you to make sure that you enter in the challenges tab, not only for your points, but also to make sure you're getting the PD credit, and that is FSC 043. And we will be sure to put that in the chat as well. But thank you all for attending the session, and thank you again to our panelists for all the great information that they provided.